Hello everyone and welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I am your host Nick Henning, and today we are covering a game that I'm very excited to talk about. This is the Great Western Trail 2024 Ring Final, which if you know my record from this year, you'll know that I did not win this game. This is actually, I think, one of the absolute best final games of Great Western Trail that we've had at WSBG to date. It is a very interesting game. There's definitely a number of things in it that I think could have shaken out really differently and may really change the course of the game. The thing that I think is also really wonderful is that you'll see throughout the course of the game, at the beginning, we're all very tight, very focused on our gameplay, and we all kind of like loosen up as players as the game goes on, which I think is a lot of fun to watch back for me. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is about 2.5 hours, but I'm going to play it at plus 20% speed. I actually think that we play at a very good pace here and might have to pause sometimes, but at the end, it starts to drag a little bit, so I want to do that. Also, at the top over that away, I'm going to try this. We'll see if I stick with it through the whole video. I'm going to make some notes about how I think the points scores of the game are adjusting over the course of time because of a point that I'm hoping to make later in the video. Without any further ado, let's get fired off. All right, we've got Wei Wei in seat 1 here, and I don't know him very well personally, but he was also at the Arc Nova final, so clearly a very sharp, heavy gamer. He is going to start off, looks like he has the full rainbow perhaps in his hand, or actually it looks like he had a green, black, white, which is a really good starting draw for a first player, and then drops the green off to build a building in a pretty nice tack spot at the bottom there. He chooses to go the bottom row instead of the desert row because there is a black hand there instead of a green hand there, which is obviously a really great starting play. It's not always the case that when you're in first seat, your starting hand is going to cooperate with you in that way. So I do think that he made the right call by jumping straight to the end of the track. He'll get to deliver, and then because the heads are at the beginning, he'll get to double buy right at the beginning. A really, really strong game for first seat. Blake is going to, in second seat here, go and pick up an employee early. And the first one that he grabs is an engineer here, which is a little bit of an interesting choice. My default first grab is always a builder. He might have a hand, I didn't quite see what it was, with a whole pile of ones in it. It's not a bad game for engineers in the sense that the station master spots are pretty good. However, it is a little bit of a bad game for engineers because both of the engineer spots are in the middle of the board, which could make your row travel a little bit clunky. So Blake making that choice at the beginning is quite a called shot, but you can get away with buying the first engineer, throwing them in the station master, and just getting out of that slot entirely. So it's not necessarily a heavy commitment here. But again, in a vacuum, I would probably have purchased builder, because this is a game where the second builder lets you buy the cowboy shuffler, a good tax building, a good movement building, and if you end up playing cowboys, also a really good building, like one of the best buildings you can have in cowboy strategy in general. So rushing straight out to getting to place that is very helpful. That being said, this is a board with really crap hazards. There's mostly bandits in play, and so the taxers early is not going to be that big of a deal. Blake, by the way, is a fan of the channel, and so we're inherently rooting for him to do well in this game. I have in my starting hand here, I believe, a perfect draw, and I decide I'm just going to stop off and pick up a bunch of money because there isn't really a whole lot else that I want to be doing at the beginning here. I don't want to mess up my starting hand. I want to have the flexibility of cash. So I decided to start at the end, pick up some money, and yeah, I'll have to draft it with Wei Wei's coattails there, but I'll get second crack at what I want to buy from the head market at the bottom. This is one of the advantages of going third or fourth, is you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to have that sort of perfect hand. And I certainly could have stopped and discarded a green to build a building, but there isn't any building anymore that I'm super excited to play. I don't necessarily know what my next lap is going to look like, where I'm going to want what building to play. So I like keeping my options a little bit open here and just grabbing the cash so I can give myself choices later on. It's not an amazing opening play, and just kind of a way to punt and see how the game shapes out from here. Dalton is in 4th seat here, and Dalton and I have played Great Western Trail a fair amount of times together. He beats me every single time we play at any table that is significant, like a finals table. I beat him anytime we play at a normal game, like a first round game or something like that. So he certainly has the better end of me in that kind of relationship. So we'll have to see how this one shakes out over the course of this game. He was first to draft his objectives from the beginning of the game, which I don't think makes that big a difference, to be honest, which ones you draft. And he takes the 2 building and the hazard one. Since the hazard's in the bottom left corner, it's pretty easy to pick up a hazard at some point in the game. 2 buildings with 3 level 1 buildings in play is very easy to fire off. You're going to probably want to drop that taxer. No matter what strategy you are, it's legitimate to drop the discard 2 cards to get $3 and move 1 space 1. So really easy to get those 2 buildings to play. And of course, if you play builder, it's basically just a freebie to go for that building. So pretty legit here. Dalton, however, is taking quite a long time debating what he wants to do with his hand of 7 cards here. We saw that he was about to discard a whole pile of 1s jerseys there. So I think that are Criollos, not jerseys. So I think that he was maybe debating whether he wants to start in the bottom left corner and pick up $4 to start off with, go with a really slow money accumulation strategy, particularly since I grabbed the $3 bandit with the $1. So I grabbed the other $4 play. He decides instead he's going to go for a more normal discard, and I apologize for the choppiness here. I guess this is a side effect of the speed, or maybe it's the size of the video and my poor computer trying to deal with all this stuff. We'll see. Fortunately, it's a board game. A little bit of choppiness isn't going to ruin too much, I think, as you're watching. So he decides to stop at the building up top here. He sees that there's nowhere really to drop a good hazard in play, and since there's a good taxer in play, and so since there's nowhere really to drop a great taxer in play, dropping the discard 2 of the same card and move 1 space is a nice choice. He does it in the top corner there, which commits him to unfortunately to like wanting to go into that building space a lot over the course of the game, suggesting that he is likely to play more of a builder strategy. It's something that I probably should have thought more about in the moment that we're playing this game, but at the time also it's kind of like, it's a good spot. It's a place where you get assert. You don't want to assert in $2 for discarding a jersey. If you have a bunch of crap in your hand at the end of the lap, that's really great. And Wei Wei, of course, is going to come in here and deliver pretty much all your first deliveries in Great Western Trail should be to Kansas City. There's extremely few exceptions, and I'm not even going to go into them in this conversation here. It's just kind of the default starting move. You need the cash to get everything started in this game, and so Wei Wei is going to do exactly that. Blake here now has a choice of paying either Wei Wei $1 or $2 to the bank. $1 to an opponent is almost always better than $2 to the bank. There are people who I see who really are stubborn about giving their opponents that money. I think at that ratio, it's a mistake. Maybe like a $2 versus $3 situation. I get 1 to 2. I think you always pay your opponent. Blake agrees with me, and he's going to move through 3 here to move his train a little bit and pick up a certificate. Of the 2 spots that you can move your train here, I certainly think this is the one that makes the most sense. He moves onto the 2 space here, which is a little bit of a bummer. I mean, he has no choice. There's no other way to not move this, but I'm just stating that another train move here doesn't really get him to where he needs to be. Moving onto the 4 spot is not necessarily better than being at the 2 spot. That is one of the things that is tough, I think, about buying just 1 engineer at the beginning of the game, and a reason that I am generally not going to do that myself. These tables are big. That's not me just dismissively throwing things around, although I do dismissively throw things around. It's just a little bit hard for me to reach places, and I've got these short spaghetti arms that can only go so far. So, you'll have to excuse that. See, there I placed nicely. And we drop out more builders than engineers. I could have done double engineers, but actually it looks like I'm trying to make the market fill with builders, but really what I'm trying to do is make sure those builders don't end up being $5. I really dislike $5 builders. Obviously, being the one to buy $5 builders is great, but it's unlikely that I'm going to be that person because Dalton's going to deliver, Blake's going to deliver, and then probably Wei Wei's going to deliver and get the first crack at the 5s. We've got 1, 2, 3 deliveries before we're going to open up those 5s. And so there's a good chance that I'm not the one who's getting at the $5 things. So I want the $5 things to be things that are not necessarily as juicy, which are usually engineers. We flip even more bandits. It's a game where we flip like a equal amount of bandits and hazards to start off with, but then we just keep flipping bandits and bandits and bandits out of the bag. And this is going to really change the course of a lot going on in this game, as now bandits are really, really high value. This works out nicely for Blake, who's decided to slow roll. He can pick up an extra $5 if he wants to. And Dalton could actually even throw an extra one out here, but I think wisely chooses to throw out the cowboy in the 5 slot instead, rather than giving Blake the extra money here. And just like that, we see 3 people with very, very quick deliveries at the beginning. The plan is to buy double heads really quickly in the aftermath of it. Now, you might look at this and say, oh, Blake makes a mistake by buying just one guy. But actually, with engineers, there is a kind of interesting dynamic here where if he ends up buying 2 engineers after that, he gets to fill to the 4 slot. Or really, if you buy anything, if you buy a single cowboy or single builder and you're able to buy duplicates of the same, you get to that magic 4 slot on your second delivery. And I think that actually works out really well. So I don't think that buying just one head is a bad call in the first lap. I know some other players are really, you got to be super efficient, but buying single guys is not bad at the beginning of the game. Wei Wei here does an interesting play where he says, I'm going to go both the builder and the cowboy. I normally prefer single lines, but actually on this board setup, I really like that. You give yourself the option of being a cowboy player. You give yourself the option of being a builder player, depending on how things shake out. And no matter what, you're not upset with this because you can build the cowboy shuffler. It's a little bit better. You can buy some cowboys. And having 2 cowboys is not bad for the discounts it will give you. In the long run, yeah, having like multiple builders and 1 cowboy is not great, but it probably comes close to paying itself back. Makes it a little bit harder for any other cowboy player. And the other way around, that extra builder there is not that good for the cowboy player if you play heavy cowboys, but it allows you to really quickly get out that shuffler. So the flexibility, or not the flexibility, but the speed of that opening, along with the fact that you can kind of move into either strategy. And yes, it's not as powerful as just single focusing a strategy, but he gives himself options for the future. Blake goes and drops a building here, which I assume is going to be a reflection of the fact that he has 2 greens in hand, because I don't love this building placement. I think that, like Dalton, if I were in Blake's position, I would have dropped the move 1 space and get $3 here, because Blake is never going to get this tax. Really what he's doing is he's costing all of his opponents $1 per lap, which is fine. I mean, that is a good thing to do, but with no deserts coming up, it's really unclear how valuable this desert taxer is going to be in the long run. Further, if Blake is going for a engineer strategy, he would like the option to very quickly get to the engineer spots in the middle, and putting extra cardboard in the way could backfire in the long run here. Now, I am going to pause here because my decision here is I'm going to pause here and then I pause myself, not the video. So let me pause here. And I went in and I bought 2 engineers rather than buying 2 builders. And this is a huge, huge choice in this game. First of all, as I said before, I maybe should have considered that Dalton was a little bit better set up to take advantage of builders in this game and take the 2 builders to slow him down in that regard. I know that if I buy 2 builders here, Dalton is absolutely... if I buy 2 engineers here, Dalton is absolutely going into 2 builders. I know that builders is his favorite strategy. Builders is generally the best strategy. If I buy 2 builders here, there's a really good chance that he ends up going into engineers or cowboys, which is, not a problem for me. Or he could do kind of like a 1-1 thing like Wei Wei, which would be sort of interesting. I think there's actually a really good chance that he just leaves the engineers in play for Blake, does maybe like a 1 cowboy, 1 builder thing, or like me, decides to go into engineers along the way here. You'll notice that when I delivered in the previous lap, I took off my disc not for money, but I took off my disc for train movement. So I actually made this decision about what I was buying when I delivered, not when I just took my turn here. So I'm talking for a really long time because this is a huge, huge inflection point just at the beginning of the game. I'm going to keep this paused for a while. But I noticed that, of course, Blake moves onto the 2 spot. If I buy 2 engineers, I go 1, 2, 3 into the 4 spot, jumping over him. And then I have that extra train move that I removed from the top there. And I could very quickly and easily slide into the first station there for the permacert and a way to get points from hazards, which are in the bottom left corner, an action that I'm probably going to take a decent amount of times over the course of the game here, at least twice for the 3 points. Then I'll have 2 engineers and the ability to move 2. So I could take that second train location and then basically immediately grab the second one, which is another permacert, and the one that gives points for for every 2 stations that a person has. Now, the 2 stations that a person has, if I end up going engineers later in the game, is monstrously good. If I don't, it's just 3 points, and that's okay too. And then I could move into builders and be pretty good at delivering cows with my +2 permacerts. It's even, I guess, viable to move into builders afterwards, although pretty unlikely that I'm doing builders after this. So I feel like I give myself some options. I really like the idea of nabbing these initial station masters, bouncing off of Blake's initial move here. And that is the game plan. That's kind of what I'm thinking in this moment, is that I can blow up and decide my plan from there. Further, I don't think that builders is amazing this game. I maybe misjudged how powerful they were. We'll come back to that later in the game. But in this game, the payoff building is the 4-4-4 rather than the max your certs and move 5 spaces. By the 4-4-4, I mean they get $4, move your train 4 spaces, and move your guy 4 spaces. And what I mean by the payoff building is exactly that. There's the 2 buildings that are really the most powerful for your engine that you are building towards, that you're accelerating towards as the builder player. The 4-4-4 building is not very good if all of the original stations are taken by someone else. So I figured that if I move into engineers, nab all those initial stations, that really the builder player is not going to be able to do anything all that powerful with the 4-4-4 over the course of the game. We'll see how that works out. Dalton, of course, then moves in very quickly, is going to snatch up the 2 builders, happy to not contest builders along the way. My other hope here, by the way, is that Wei Wei decides, hey, I'll go into builders after him. He'll grab the 4 builders, and then Dalton will just be stuck. I was a little bit burned in, or a lot of it burned in last year's final by going into Cowboys and having another player go into Cowboys, Cameron, go into Cowboys behind me, which was entirely reasonable on his part, but fighting for... I've fought for a worker type every single year that I've played this game, and I was hoping to play a year where I didn't have to do as much fighting, or I was the one who got to choose the fighting, which, you know, it looks like I'm fighting Blake, but actually my plan is not to fight Blake here. I'm planning to just piggyback off of him, and then if he wants to go heavy engineers, great. If he wants to get out of engineers, great. I'll do the opposite of that, is the plan that I have at the beginning here. I don't think that it's bad to steal the initial 2 station masters from the engineer player if he does become an engineer player, because he can just go long ways. And so that to me is an entirely fine relationship. Maybe even Blake and I can get a couple moves off of each other. I benefit more from those moves with the exploding station masters because I suck at moving, but he benefits from the moves because long range station masters need some acceleration to get somewhere at the beginning of the game. And like I said, engineers long term, I don't think is the most powerful strategy here. I've got to pay some taxes to get through, but I'm going to execute exactly what I talked about here by moving those 3 spaces, getting to the 4. Now you'll say, hold on, wait a second. You didn't get in like you said you were going to. I'm going to when I go to the next spot. And I'm not concerned about anyone overtaking me because there's not sufficient move, and Blake is, of course, about to deliver. Dalton here doesn't really have any other great plays, so hopefully for him, he's kind of drawn into 2 jerseys that he can dump in the bottom left corner here, which, by the way, is what Wei Wei did on his turn. He was in the same position once where, yeah, because of the one nice thing about Blake's play of the, or one of the nice things about Blake's play of the cardboard into the forest there is that it slowed down a cowboy strategy. So Wei Wei picking up a couple bucks along the way here as we all pass through his taxer, which is certainly putting him in a nice position. And Dalton does indeed drop here and discard the 2 grays for $4. Now, he makes a choice here that I don't agree with at this time, and I'm still actually not sure about it to this day, but he spends $7 to remove the hazard there. I think it's too early to do this, but he has decided, he knows that he is always going up north. He's always going to have to pass through that cardboard. He's always going to be paying that $1. So by paying $7 now, he gets out from underneath it and doesn't have to worry about it. I think the reason that he can get away with doing this is because there's a lot of bandits in the row. I don't think in a vacuum you can make this choice, but he is going to pick up a decent amount of money when he goes to his double spot there. I don't think that he knows that he's going to draw into multiple jerseys to make that card happen. So he does need to be a little bit lucky here to get the cash back that he needs, but the bandits here are going to make his life a little bit easier in doing that. Blake's going to push out probably cheap engineer here, which makes a lot of sense for him. He unfortunately is not going to be able to reap the rewards of the things that he's putting in this 5 slot here. And I think very wisely decides not to put out that bandit for the players, myself, Dalton, Wei Wei, that are coming in the aftermath there. Wei Wei, by the way, very quickly on his turn, just bought a 3 cow, which makes a ton of sense. That's what you do with 2 cowboys. And yeah, nothing else to say about that. Running the basic system. Yeah, I like Blake's choices here. It's a little bit of a bummer for him that he is not going to get to take advantage of delivering the 5s because no one is going to come in right after him. It's a little bit of a bummer because if I had actually ended up choosing sort of a slightly different path here, I could actually just whip straight into Kansas City and take advantage of the cheap 5ers, but I'm a little bit committed at this point. And if Blake goes in front of me and he buys the engineers, the discounted engineers, then all of a sudden I really have nothing to buy without, getting rid of my guys. So I think that I am debating, but have to realize that I need to stick with my original plan of putting the engineer in. That's why I'm looking to the sky, because I'm saying, if I go in here, is Blake going to just move 2 spaces on the train track, explode his engineer, and get out of it? Like, an ideal option here. Let's say that I deliver right now, and I put in whatever, a builder or an engineer, either would work really. And then Blake says, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to buy 2 cowboys for $5 each. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to take the 2 move, grab the permacert, and then I'm going to be the cowboy player. That would be the ideal situation for me. I actually think it would also be really, really good for Blake because it creates a kind of contest between Wei Wei and Blake. But Blake is ahead on that contest. He's gotten very discounted cowboys. He's gotten rid of his station master, so he knows for sure that he's going to go in, get that permacert, and then he has a really powerful game plan from there, which is basically just pick up a hazard, go buy a cowboy, deliver every round of the game. Bottom left, top right, out. He could, decide to stop and pick up a bandit if he needs some money on the way out. But that would be, I think, that to me, that was the ideal loop in the game. I did not trust that if I delivered here, though, that was what Blake was going to do, because it's very reasonable for Blake to also say, well, I've already got the two engineers. If I buy 2 more engineers, I can go crazy on engineers and shoot my train up. And then he also would be able to move. And then I can buy the 2 cowboys, but that's not really as exciting for me because I have a little bit more commitment to the engineers here, and Blake is able to beat me out of any of the spaces that I want to go into here. So I decided I need to just stick with the plan. We slide into the station here with the 1 move, unlock the 2 move, and then move our train 2 spaces. When we hit the bandit spot at the end of the lap, we're going to be able to do those last 2 moves, which will get us in before Blake is going to be able to with his pile of engineers in the aftermath. This does bind me a little bit in terms of my actions. That's why you saw me sitting there doing a bunch of math. How many things I'm going to be able to do? Am I going to be able to afford stuff? I'm going to have time. Is definitely a challenge that I have. Dalton here drops $1 along the way. And then now we get to see how lucky he was on the redraw. He actually wasn't lucky enough. He decides to go for a draw discard here, which to me says that he has 2 jerseys and he's drawing for a 3rd. He discards a green cow here, which means he's got multiple green cows in hand and a jersey. Oh, he must have discarded a green and something else. He discards 2 blacks and the jersey there. So he must have had the 2 blacks, maybe not had a jersey at all. So now that actually really makes his draw discard incredibly reasonable from his draw off the top of the deck. The odds that you're going to hit a jersey with 5 left in the deck are quite high. So he ends up getting essentially the full cannonade of money there, and then he gets to upgrade his 1 to a 4, which is going to let him get his 4 to an 8 immediately for a really, really quick 4-4-4. That's a very, very speedy 4-4-4 setup for his builder opening here. Of course, I said I was going to do all these things with points, and then I completely forgot to. Let's see if I can catch up a little bit. Wei Wei here picked up a cow for 3 points. I've picked up a station, which we're going to call 1 point. And actually, Wei Wei's also got the building. And then Dalton's got the building. And I think that's about it for points right now. I guess we all have -4 for delivering to Kansas. Decimal 3, hilarious. Wei Wei here debates for a while. Does he want to stop? Does he want to discard the green here? Does he want to pick up the bandit right now when it's as high as possible? He decides he's going to play more buildings here. I mean, he really has to, right? Like, he has the 2 builders. I'm actually not quite sure what he was debating here. Maybe he sees that he has a really awkward hand or knows that he's about to draw into an awkward hand because of what his first lap looked like. But I think that it makes a ton of sense that he decides to drop off this building here, and he puts it in a spot that's going to tax really Blake and me. This is a good spot in terms of whipping into the end, but if Wei Wei is planning on taking the bandit action, then he's not going to get a ton of taxes here. Maybe he will later in the game, a couple, but the 3 move from there does go into the end. So the question is really, is this good for his lap? It's right after where the cow delivery space is. And so I don't know that this is actually the best spot for it. I think maybe facilitating a way for him to one-shot out of the gate to get to the cow action space is the best, which would be in the middle of the desert, or if he wants to be greedy, maybe on that left space on the desert where he can take a certificate to do that. So the spot that he played in is not bad. Whipping directly into the end is great, but he's always planning on stopping on that cow action, and it's not paying him any money now and for quite a while, I think. We'll see if I'm wrong about that, but yeah, the placement is not the dream for me, but also I will say there are not dream placements in general here. Blake decides I'm going to go into engineers. He buys the 2 engineers, so he's going to be big engineer. That's reasonable. It's not too surprising given the options that he had available. In fact, because I didn't open the 5 row, this was really the only strategic choice that he had. And then he decides to buy another cowboy. This is a bummer for me. I think that Blake, it's clear that Blake is going to do this so that he can go and buy a cow. But I think that there's a little bit of a responsibility to get in the way of the builder player or players here and buy the builder off the row. I guess ultimately, I take it back. He can't stop Dalton from getting his extra builder because when Dalton delivers, he'll get to drop a builder into the 5 row. This is, by the way, why I put it in the 7 row, hoping to not draw another one. So Dalton gets a little lucky with that builder being flipped out there. But if the builder was not in the slot 2, I think Blake should have bought the builder. Now that I see that there's a builder in slot 2, I actually do like Blake's play well enough. I see that I'm not going to be in first for a while. I've unfortunately dilly-dallied doing this station master stuff that I'm going to need to take my time. So I stop and just pick up a cow. I have extra black cards in my hand. I have extra money. And so I'm just playing a slow strategy here where I score 3 points. Hooray. Dalton comes in here and delivers. Huge bandit in play for $8 now. And Dalton reveals a very garbagey hand, which is kind of the consequence of having discarded some decent cards to make his top loop happen. So he did get the cash he needed, and this is an interesting play. Usually builders really need a lot of money. He didn't stop for $6 or actually really $8 that he could have because he knows that he's going to have exactly $9 after this delivery to go into and buy the $5 builder, which he can't be contested on now, and then spend the $4 that he needs to upgrade. So he's planning on going absolutely broke. He counted his money down to exactly 9, which is a nice tight play that's going to prevent Wei Wei from getting in Dalton's way of being the builder player. Because otherwise Wei Wei would have the option of double buying those builders and taking out Dalton's crack at it. So Dalton says, I'm going to take the money inefficient option to just guarantee that I get into the builder plan, which I think is a very good play on his part and something that he notices about the tempo of the game. It takes a disciplined player to pass up on $8. Now, Wei Wei here has a lot of money in hand. He does a draw discard here because he's got a pretty crappy hand, which makes sense. It also forces his deck to shuffle, and he gets to throw those 2 grays into the discard pile. Really ideal time to use your draw 2, discard 2 token. And then from here, you see he's having the same agony. He can stop for $10 now. 10's a huge amount of money and is my instinct of what he should take. However, is he really going to need the money? He's going to stop and buy those cowboys probably. Dalton's not going to. And so Wei Wei can spend $12 to buy those cowboys, and he decides, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm not running a very money expensive strategy. The advantage of cowboys is that you don't need a ton of cash. I, at the time, thought this was a mistake. Even watching this back now, I thought it was a mistake. But later in the game, you're going to see that Wei Wei just is full of cash all game long. And so I actually think this ends up being a very disciplined choice on his part. He probably has the same concern that Dalton does. If I go shooting into the end, I can buy those $5 cowboys. And Wei Wei doesn't know that that's not really what I'm thinking about doing on my turn anyway. But it's important for him to realize that that he has the capacity, that I have the capacity to do that, and say, you know what, I will just take the money that I can. I'm going to get those cheap heads. And I don't know, maybe if they were there, I would have to think about it on my turn. He takes the decision away from me, though, so it becomes irrelevant in the same way that Dalton took the decision away from him, which I respect on both players' parts. I think it's actually a good play on their parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Blake's got 4 movement here. This is somewhere where I can talk about the fact that he couldn't buy a 5th engineer hurts him a little bit. If he could have bought a 5th engineer rather than a 2nd cowboy, he absolutely would have, because then he'd be able to shoot into the station that rewards you for having a lot of stations here. He's going to move his train though. And of course, you might as well move it as far as you possibly can and get a Sir along the way. Doesn't really have a lot of choices here unless he wanted to discard something from his hand for $4. I think this makes a ton of sense for Blake's turn. I see that I have no time now. Blake has, I think, not removed his single move disc. So I'm asking myself the question is Blake the kind of player that would move 1 space rather than 4 spaces to take a station? And I really want that next station so I can get out of engineers. Since Blake's bought all the engineers, I want to be done with this strategy. I just want to grab those station masters and get out. If I knew Blake better, or if I had a better sense of what would happen, I maybe would be greedy here and go and build a building. But because I think that any player would reasonably stop to pick up this station master that is worth 3 points for every 2 stations you take when you are playing the engineer strategy, I get scared and I say, you know what? I don't think that Blake is going to leave this for me. And instead, I'm going to move in myself, get rid of this last station master. Now, this isn't that big of a deal for Blake, honestly. He can just move 4 on his next turn and pick up the next station, which is great for him because he's already got a lot of employees. He can either decide to throw an engineer in there so that he can re-trigger his discounted purchase, or he can throw the cowboy in there. He's got a couple really great options here. I don't think this really hurts him. That was what the long debate was about, was does he just sort of shoot ahead on the track, which I actually think might be the most powerful sequence here, but it's tough to say with what is probably the best station master tile for engineers. If it was a worse station master tile, I think absolutely I could be greedy and have built a building here. Oh well. Wei Wei's taxer will at least have cost me $1 here, so that works out nicely. Oh, by the way, I do get some more points here. Actually, 3 more for that, for having scooped up that other station. I pick up a whole bunch of money. I get that station master right there. I spend this time here thinking about what I want to do in terms of removing a disc. I've already got the 2 move disc. The question here is, am I going to do a backup strategy? Am I going to turn all this train movement into certificates or shred my deck? That'd be nice if I could maybe get some cowboys. Unfortunately, Wei Wei here is going to buy both the $5 cowboys, and Dalton is going to buy the $5 builder. So only the $5 engineer is going to be left, but I don't really want to get the engineer because Blake is going to move into the next station, and that engineer is going to become useless pretty much immediately. So I'm asking myself the question of can I buy these cowboys? And I think I have a bad hand right now. But I have $8, so I might have enough money to buy 2 cowboys. 14, 16. Yeah, so it would be reasonable. I think I end up counting that, like, based on the cards in my hand, I need to draw a white card off the top of my deck, and I'm like reshuffling, so it's like totally random. And I'm debating whether I'm going to be backing up. I don't want to commit to like, am I a cowboy and a shredder? So I say, I'll just take this one. That's the normal $1 one. That's going to be the action I take. But it would be really neat if I could play a game where I don't actually have to unlock that double $1 thing and could just like shred and get money by backing up instead, getting rid of these. That would be the ideal situation and would have been what I really wanted to do. Dalton here executes exactly what we're doing. He's got the 4-4-4 online about as early and about as fast as you could possibly ever do in this game, which is very good. And he has it in a spot where he's getting certificates and money as well, which is going to keep him open with a lot of options. However, the 4 train movement is pretty bad. The 4 person movement is equivalent to 1 person movement because it's right in front of the building space right there. So functionally right now, his 4-4-4 building has turned into an elaborate way of getting money, which is very good. Money is king in this game, but it doesn't convert into victory points directly. So he does need to find a way to make points off of that. Oh, however, though, that will score him a whole bunch of points. I think it's like 4 extra points, maybe, let's say 5 extra points. I don't remember exactly the point totals on them. Worth 9? Maybe it's 10. We'll give him 1 more. Who knows? Blake here makes a play that is, I think, really devastating for him and really devastating for me. I make a mistake after this. I think he absolutely needed to stop in, move his train 4 spaces. 4 is a good number of move when you're an engineer, and pick up that next station master tile. I'm not quite sure why he decides not to do that in this moment. Maybe he's got a money issue where if he picks that up, nope, that's not it. Because if he picks up $2 from the train move, he gets also a $2 rebate from the station master tile. And so maybe he's scared of getting rid of his cowboy before he goes to the cowboy market. But I think it would be entirely reasonable for him to discard an engineer here and unlock the thing. So this is a really big surprise to me. I'm going to end up making what I think might be mistakes in the aftermath of this because of this sequence, but he's moved in such a way that I see he's no longer able to get that next station. If I want to buy that $5 engineer and get into that next station, I can suddenly because of the way that Blake's going to have to take turns and go in and not going to be able to get back to the movement space. Blake instead buys a cow, which isn't bad. Buying a blue cow is correct. I just think that he needed to make an extra stop along the way. I'll throw some more taxes here in the mountains, which is nice to slow down Dalton, but sucks because now we have to pay Wei Wei taxes. So Wei Wei's taxer building there that I was maligning earlier, very quickly coming back to be very good. And Wei Wei also probably noticed that Dalton is going for the 4-4-4 up top where the taxer is. So he's going to be the one who's getting the money going through that mid path anyway. So good call on his part, bad call on my part to debate whether it's there. It is bad for movement. What I said before still holds. I think that playing in another location would be valid, but certainly his tax situation is off the chain. Wei Wei doesn't really need any more money this game. He's playing Cowboys and he's got the 2 most ideal taxers in play, getting taxed by almost every single player as we're going through. I'm talking to myself. I'm so intense at the beginning of this game. I could literally feel my anxiety while I was watching this video. It's pretty funny. And so this is a $7 row. I know that Dalton's just going to get access to these builders anyway. And so I think that I'm a little bit nervous about what Blake can pull off with a whole cadre of engineers. And I don't think I'm really helping Dalton. He doesn't have enough. It doesn't make that much of a difference whether it's 7s or 9s for these guys because there's already too many builders available in play. That's kind of one of the things that is, I think, pretty luck-based in Great Western Trail is how the heads come out. It makes a really, really big difference from game to game. If we flip fewer of one type of worker, it becomes a really big problem. That being said, in this game, I think we flipped like pretty equal amounts of every worker. So I would describe this as a normal game, but sometimes things can go pretty steeply in one direction or the other. Dalton here is broke, so he's going to pick up some money. cycle through some crap in his deck. He doesn't really have any other plays here because everything in the middle is pretty bad for him. The fact that there are not desert taxers is probably kind of ideal for Dalton and Wei Wei, actually. Wei Wei removed that desert hazard with his 4th cowboy, which is going to allow him to whip around straight to his spot right there, and disproving the fact that I said he could put his cowboy shuffler somewhere. Basically, not flipping a desert hazard, an additional desert hazard, has made it so that Wei Wei's been able to clear the path and have a very quick round on his own. I think he bought we're going to say that he bought, I don't know, a 6-point cow there. We'll pretend. The first of Wei Wei's taxes, although I think Blake is actually broke here because he counted his money very well. And he'll pitch a green here to play the probably the move 1 space. Again, not a ton of really exciting spots for this to go. I think probably on the left in the desert is what I'd be looking at. Blake wants to be stopping at the engineer space every single turn. And so if he puts it there, it's a way for him to cycle cards for money in the middle of the lap. It's a way for him to get a certificate. But also, it looks like his hand is kind of crap right now. So he wants to discard a pair of jerseys, dropping on that spot to get $3 immediately, which I think makes a lot of sense. Also, if another player colludes with Blake and puts another building across from on the diagonal there, then Wei Wei's slingshot going into the end is suddenly not as good. And I think that Wei Wei's position in this game is very powerful right now. He is crushing us at 9 points, but he's an uncontested cowboy player with a shuffler in a dream location and all the best taxers in play. My sense is that right now Wei Wei is winning this game. He also has the power of going first, which I think is overstated by most Great Western Trail players, but it is indisputably the best. Not indisputably. In the majority of games, it is the best spot. I pick up 2 employees here because I want to move into buying cows. I just need some way to score points in the mid game because I'm playing this kind of explosive strategy. And I could have bought 2 cowboys, but I saw this really sneaky get another station master play, and I'm rewarded for getting 2 more stations, so that's great. If I get all of the stations, I mean, that's even more exciting because I can get the extra certificates. Like, I've got a bunch of free certificates, so that 4th station master spot is really good for me. The 3rd station master spot is a minimum 3 points, maybe more, and so this is just a good way for me to convert heads directly into points. But it does mean that I'm not going to have much of a system or an engine going into the middle of the game here. This, by the way, is my favorite strategy in Great Western Trail. It's way too cute by a half. We're going to see how badly this punishes me to be cute or not be cute in this game. But it is my favorite strategy in this game to play by a gazillion miles. It's just so much fun. And being bold enough to try to execute it in a final. Dalton teases me for experimenting, but I've played this a lot online, honestly. I largely do know what I'm doing here. It is just risky. It is a really risky strategy because in the late game, you suck. You suck so much worse than everybody else. That being said, I like that I can drop to the bottom left and buy a hazard, go to a cow in the top right, which is what I wanted to be doing, which is why I'm trying to move into a cowboy strategy here. I also want to be competing with Wei Wei just a little bit. I do think he's in a really good position. Dalton here doesn't have the move because of the rock hazards. That is one thing that ends up hurting him. So he does have to stop in, and I think he doesn't even pick up a cow. He says, I need the money. Actually, he might just not even have the money really, but he needs the money to build stuff. And that's, part of the consequence of not having stopped last turn, having rushed the builder. So I think that's fine. It's a slow off turn for him, and that sucks, but that is a consequence of the things that he's done. Wei Wei here is going to do a draw 4, discard 4. He's already shuffled through his deck a second time here because of that really aggressive and well-timed draw 2, discard 2 that shuffled his deck before. He's going to dump a whole pile of greens out here. And looks like he could have stopped for a building, but he doesn't need to. He's going to stop instead for $8. He's getting a little bit low on money. This will allow him to buy maybe more cowboys, maybe remove hazards. I don't think he quite needs this. Actually, in fact, I think he could have waited to take this money in the long term. Personally, I think that he should have just delivered here, given himself a little bit of timing and tempo, unless he's planning on buying multiple cowboys. But I don't think he's planning on buying the 7 and the 9 cowboy. He can wait until later in the game to buy the cowboy and just live life as 4 cowboys. It's one of the things I really like about the cowboy strategy is there's plenty of good purchase options that you have earlier in the game. And you can decide to buy the extra cowboys later for some marginal efficiency, some victory points. Whereas with the other 2 strategies, the builder and engineer strategy, you really want to be rushing to get those 5th and 6th guys in most of the time. Engineer especially, I think, really is rewarded for having, the max number of heads, which is why their 4th slot is buy more heads. I guess Wei Wei here actually looks at his hand and he realizes that if he draws into a black cow... Yeah, I think he was debating whether he wanted to do a draw 2, discard 2. Blake here goes in and he discards actually 2 black cows rather than 2 white cows, which is a little bit of a surprise. I think that means that I'm not as confident in the placement of where that blue slider building went. It's not like his deck is very good, and I think we'd have to look at his discard pile to really have a sense, but there's a chance that he just kind of gets jammed up with the number of with oneers there. I go ahead and do my truck along barely any and get a certificate here, which gets me to 3 certificates. I, by the way, have 5 certificates now, 2 perma-certs and 3 certs in the back there. So I'm absolutely delivering to a 10 or a 12 even this turn. I'm already at 3 certificates. This is the awkward thing about this sequence of play. Yeah. So I end up wishing that I'd unlocked the 4 certificate spot, but instead I grab a objective. I don't remember exactly what objective I grabbed, but I think it was one that I was like absolutely getting. There are a lot of good objectives for me because I have stations, I have bandits. I'm going to be buying hazards, so most anything except for the cows one I can do pretty handily. Dalton here assembles Exodia by it's just the same joke that Jeff made. By the way, you can watch this over on the Dice Tower with Jeff, who's a 2022 and 23 finalist, along with Chris George, if you like. But Dalton will basically put the full money thing in the top there, basically just ensuring that he gets a gazillion dollars every time he finishes the lap so that he can buy buildings and buy heads at the beginning of the lap. He'll be broke in the middle, but he'll always be able to do buildings and head things. So the kind of 2 core things that he's doing. Wei Wei's got an 8 delivery here. I suspect he's just going to deliver the full 8. He did stop to pick up money, so he's pretty wealthy in cash. Ooh, looks like he's deciding to do the 1. He wants to save the $3. I do think this is a mistake. I don't think he needs all that money. We're going to see if he ends up spending it or not, but he is already so incredibly wealthy that I think going to the 8 spot and allowing him to grab that objective when he delivers the 10 is probably better. Oh, Dalton got another 5 points or so, I think. Looks like we got a draw discard from Blake, who's going to go ahead and deliver in here. And looks like he maybe put out a desert hazard, which makes a ton of sense. He wants to hope for that desert to be painful for other people, even if he himself is not going to collect that much money from it. Actually, I think he's not collected a single dollar off of it. Even from himself, he hasn't even taken the action, which makes sense. It's not terribly good action. pushes out non-engineers into the 9 cost spot, which I think makes all the sense in the world. And has not a terribly strong delivery here, having drawn a whole bunch of whites off of his deck. That's a double whammy in terms of having a really bad draw and also not having a white when he goes to the beginning of the lap. That is super bad luck for Blake. My turn here. We're going to finish the hashtag steal plan. And then I noticed that Blake is not enough moves away that I can't just keep doing the same nonsense. So I'm going to probably move 2 and then pay $2 to slide 2 more spaces so that I can go onto that bandit spot and slide 2 more spaces onto the last spot there. We'll see how much of a rush I have to do this for, though. We'll go in here. We'll grab this. This is why I was saying earlier that this is, I think, a huge mistake on Blake's part to have missed this. He absolutely had the chance to grab this. He's making the face now like he's really disappointed. And it's right. He should be. It was his spot to take. And then I'm not entirely sure if it's correct for me to have done this line versus just full off pivoting into Cowboys. If Blake had taken this, that's what I was going to do. Full pivot into Cowboys. I'd be at 3 Cowboys right now instead. I wouldn't be stopping on these spots. I would have done what Wei Wei did and immediately gone into that cow spot on my second action, which would have been right before Blake delivered. So I would have been able to. And then from there, I would have probably built a building or just picked up bandits and started over again to try and buy some Cowboys. But then my plan for the rest of the game would have been hazards, cows, maybe buy some Cowboys. But 3 Cowboys is enough to buy Browns and a pair of 3s, which is enough to score points. And buying a 4th Cowboy is immediately points for removing a hazard. Maybe that's what I should have done. And maybe I should have done it anyway, seeing this, but it was hard to say no to the station master that is immediately worth, what is that? 3, 4, 5 points or something like that. And then be able to grab the other station master with the certificates because I have 3 permacerts if I grab it. Just seemed really good to me. And it is really good. But I do wonder if the having to do multiple slow movements and not getting along the trail there does end up being problematic in some ways. Dalton just picked up money, which he definitely needed to do. Even though he has this whole get a bunch of money engine, he wants to do stuff when he comes back. Wei Wei will stop in and pick up a Cowboy. A single Cowboy here is nice, and that allows him to buy double Browns, which there are piles of on board. I wonder if I wouldn't do this. I wonder if I was Wei Wei, if I would have just gone and removed a hazard, first action, second action, bought a cow, probably another one of those 5 cows, third action, delivered, and then come back and buy 2 Cowboys at once. Just be done with it. It's a little bit more action efficient. It does mean that he doesn't get as good of a buy this turn, but that is something that I think would have been worth considering. Of course, if he didn't have 2 of the same cows in his hand to discard for the 4, then I like his play more. Blake here is seeing a lot of pain, a lot of stuff that's getting, I'm really ruining his life here. But stopping here and buying some guys does make sense. Probably a 5th engineer, and then his only real goal now, and that I've snatched all these station masters away, is to ring the bell. He wants to get all the way to the end, and instead he surprises both myself and Wei Wei with the purchase of that Cowboy right there. It's good in that terms of like Wei Wei is a little bit more contested here, but that is a bummer for me because, like I said, I was planning on kind of switching into Cowboys. I will stop and pick up some points here. Yep, a red cow to be a bad delivery guy. But I do think this is a surprise on Blake's part because now he's jammed up in having to do all middle stuff, right? Having to do move the train cows, and being split between these 2 strategies that are both going to ask for him to spend some money, along the way. I think that going for a 5th engineer probably would have been better for him. because I think that ring the bell strategy is the ideal for him at this stage. Looks like I actually didn't do the extra move too. Looks like I did not think that I was going to get the certificates. I think maybe because of the, I saw the 5 move on Blake's part. So I was maybe debating that I wasn't going to actually do the next station master thing. I think I saw that Blake was going to beat me, particularly if he bought a 5th engineer, which is what I thought he was going to do. Dalton delivers. Wei Wei can't quite get to the cow space anymore because the desert taxer's back out there. So I suspect he's going to stop in the bottom left and remove a hazard. Probably the desert hazard. He actually decides that he's not going to remove a hazard at all at this stage. He's going to keep all of his money, which I think is okay. Although I think he does have the money that he could have spent on it. He is pretty rich. There were no like ideal hazards to remove, so maybe he just figured it wasn't worth it, which is fine. Blake's going to move his train here. And he'll also pick up an objective. The objective he picks up is one that rewards him for buying lots of 3s, which is fair because now he's at 3 cowboys. So now a 4 move is a little bit awkward for Blake because it slides either into the next station inefficiently or doesn't quite get to the final station, though he could, I think, oh no, he has not unlocked any train movements, so couldn't actually get in there. Whereas if he'd gone to the 5, he would move 1 more space now, and then I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A second move of 5 could have gotten him all the way into that last station there, where he could have picked up an extra $12, burned his cowboy at the stake, been at 5 engineers, and then be running for the long races there with a ton of cash in hand. That's what I think Blake's line should have been. But, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. I prepay Wei Wei here with my $1, and I say, you know what? My strategy does not care that much about having 5 extra bucks here. I'm not going to be able to buy multiple cowboys, so it seems a little bit silly. I don't really want to stop for 1 cowboy. Considering we're halfway through the game, this is not the ideal state for me to be in. So instead, I'm probably just going to drop into the bottom left corner here. Remove a hazard is the plan, and just try to score the points of the things that I have. We're going to do this bad version of hazard cowboys with our 2 cowboys. That's the plan from here. I have a monster delivery of 12 at the very least, which is nice, and I'm not paying for most of it with the X's. This is an advantage of the Exploding Station Master strategy, is that my deliveries don't cost me money, so I actually am getting very good money every time I deliver. I unlock movement speed to give myself a lot more options here, which is not necessary on this map, but it does allow me more flexibility of what to do. I absolutely don't need the hand size. It's not like my deck is good enough to really take advantage. I mean, I can because I've got the 2 different colored 3s, but I'm not looking to do some monster deliveries here. And I definitely don't need the, 6 points. I also know I'm definitely doing another black disc delivery, so I can just take the money and the movement now rather than take the movement and the victory points here. Dalton here has a fair amount of cash, but I think not quite enough to double buy builders. So he's got to decide whether he's going to skip here. And he does exactly what I would expect that he would do, which is skip. This is kind of like what I was talking about with Wei Wei buying the one cowboy. If instead he just gets super duper rich this turn and buys both builders next turn, it's a little bit more action efficient. So he's going to swing over there, spend his money instead on removing a hazard, making it a little bit easier for him to get where he needs to go, and also save himself money around and points every time he swings through there. Wei Wei is going to come drop over here. With 5 cowboys, he's going to buy 2 4s. Really, really efficient use of money. And that's probably, let's say that's 9 points. Something like that. I think I didn't give Blake his point for his building, so we're going to give Blake one more point there. And also he's bought a cow that I don't know, I had the cow. But he bought another cow. He's buying another cow right now. I think he's buying a brown cow, which makes sense. So we're going to give him 4 points there. Dalton, we've not counted his hazards. Let's say that there are 2 3-pointers because I'm just guessing. Did I not count his hazards? -4, 10, 16. That sounds about right. None of these are perfect numbers. They're just kind of like, I'm roughly keeping track of what the scores look like over the course of this game. I think actually mine should be a little bit higher too, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5. No, I guess not. Seems about right. All right, so I think here we are debating whether we're going to buy that single cowboy, whether it makes sense, or if we're just dropping straight into the hazard removal. If we are, what hazard are we removing? We're primarily going to prioritize what's the most points to us. And I think that this choice that I make here is a little bit dubious. I think I'm going to end up removing a rockfall hazard. It's going to save Dalton $1. I, again, think that I discounted too heavily the position of the builder player. That being said, the $1 is not that big of a deal to him. I see that he's going to be making for a $10 heading up here. So costing him an extra $1 is trivial, but giving myself an extra victory point does matter. So I think I end up buying a 4-point rockfall hazard here rather than anything else. I think the desert one might have been a 2-pointer. Maybe it's a 3-pointer. I do think that it's an iffy question because the other thing that I did not consider, I agree with my assessment in terms of like a point for me is worth the amount of money that it saves Dalton. But one thing I didn't consider that I should have is the number of cardboard pieces in the way might make Dalton's life a little bit harder. That is something that will come back to bite me. So something to consider for the future is that hazards do double pain duty. That being said, it's hard to give up a victory point. Sometimes you lose by 1 point, but not that often. A lot of times you lose by a turn rather than a point, right? If I could make Dalton lose a turn, maybe that would be the difference. Who knows? Money's pretty flush in this game because we've really not flipped that many hazards in comparison to the number of bandits that we flipped out, which really doesn't work out well for me, who's playing a pretty low to the ground strategy. Dalton doesn't have the move to get where he needs to go, so instead he's going to move his train just a little bit and pick up a 2 orange bandits and a building. The building one's like a freebie. He's already got an orange bandit, so 1 more orange bandit. A pretty easy objective for him to complete, which is a good pickup for him. And he'll say, sure, I'll spend $2 for a victory point. I don't think the white disc really does anything. It's just an exchange of a point there. Also doesn't really slow down his movement because his train moves 4 when he hits the 4-4-4, so it works out fine for him. Wei Wei here is going to go and get his delivery. Looks like he's holding onto a 5er and a 3er there, so he's going to get for sure 5, 8, 10, 12. Probably just going to deliver right now. Again, he has an absolute boat of cash, so I think it'd be a mistake to stop. He agrees. He's going to deliver the 12. And then he has the interesting choice, which is always the choice as the cowboy player of do you unlock the 5 hand size or do you unlock the move? I think that Wei Wei has a great loop. If he's planning on removing hazards and dropping into the bottom left here, hand size is pretty viable here. It's going to cost him like almost all of his money that he gets from this delivery to do that, but he's got a ton of cash, so he doesn't really need it. However, the movement does allow him to get from the head space, the higher people space, to the cow space. So this is going to slow him down a little bit. I like as cowboys and when I get to the 12 as my first delivery, unlocking the 5 hand size, because the chances that I'm going to hit 10 like next are really, really high. But you super have to think about what your flow is going to be like. It's hard to hit 12 with even with the draw discard of all that amount as a cowboy, because you basically need to draw the 5 into hand. There are other combinations of cards that can make that not true, but it's pretty close to true. Oh, I don't think I gave Wei Wei his 9 points? Question mark? 9, 15, 18, 21, 22, minus 4. Oh, maybe I did. Looks like Blake here does a slight improvement, which is nice for him. Lets him kind of whip into the end there. He's got a draw 3, discard 3, which is pretty great. But again, Blake hasn't moved. In fact, I think he skipped over doing a move this turn and moving into that spot, which allows me to, again, come in and sneak away this station master space. Now, he might not care about this space, actually. Like I said, he might be planning to move on to the spot farther down the rail where he needs a 5th engineer to do that, or maybe even a 6th engineer. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 6 spaces away. So he might just be thinking to himself, I'm going to move into the very last spot there. I don't care about this next station master space. This works out really nicely for me. I don't have a whole lot else to do. But in order for me to do this, I have to claim it pretty quickly. I think that I'd removed a hazard. Yeah, so I'd straight up skipped buying a guy, and I'm saying, you know what? I'm not going to be doing this cowboy plan because the certificates thing is so good for me. This is a 5-point pickup right now. Always having that 3rd cert, and pretty easy for me to convert extra certs at the end of the game into victory points as well. I just need 1 extra cert at the end of the game for 3 extra points. This is a 5-pointer because the actual station is 2, plus it's 3 for the pair of permanent certificates that I already have of the 3 permanent certificates. Oh, it's another 3 points actually because I have the thing that rewards me for pairs of stations. So getting into the spot is pretty nice for me. It's a little bit of a bummer to have to do this before buying cowboys or buying cows, but I think I'm nearly broke anyway. Dalton's going to collect a whole pile of cash. And he's going to get to build something with a 4 build. I think probably that means he's going to buy his cowboy shuffler because there's not anything else he wants to build. He doesn't want to overbuild his things. So he's going to put his cowboy shuffler somewhere to give him an extra mobility, put some taxation on the board. It could be somewhere in the bottom left. He just kind of keeps on getting sort of stuck down there. But it also could be that he tries to make it so that he can whip around into his mountain location up top there. So if he puts it right in front of the cow building, then it's 1, 2, 3 spaces up top. And he's just basically saying, hopefully no more rock falls come out. There's none immediately showing. So unless he gets a little bit unlucky, it's a pretty great spot for him to not have to keep doing this crap that he's been doing of stopping and discarding a black card for $2, stopping and getting a single move on the station and an objective card. Not really ideal actions for him. So this placement right here makes a lot of sense as long as the bag is not unkind to him in terms of removing things. And this is where you see me put my head in my hands there. That is the mistake I made by removing the rockfall. I do think that probably opened up a little bit more for him than the 1 extra point that it got for me. So that I think is ultimately was a mistake. And I should have thought about the fact that he could have built a 3-er there, which I did not look at the time. Yeah, you see me making a really sad face about it and acknowledging that I made my own error. So be it. Wei Wei skips over buying the 6 cowboy. Doesn't quite need it right now. Instead, he's going to discard a pair of whites and remove a hazard, it looks like. No? Maybe he's doing a draw 2, discard 2. But We haven't seen him pass the turn to Blake, and I did see him take his $4. He must have been doing a draw discard or something. Oh no, that was the end of his turn. He didn't remove a hazard. I think that's a mistake. I think he should have spent 7 to remove a hazard. He's got so much money. Because he could remove the desert. I think the desert hazard must be only a 2-pointer, which is why we're all avoiding it. That might be another part of the reason why I didn't remove why I took the 4-pointer from the rockfall instead. And Wei Wei doesn't especially want to remove hazards from the water row, which also might just be 2-point hazards. But that green hand one might have been a 3-er. I can't remember. Blake here doing a draw discard. He needs a lot of heads to make his game plan work, but everything is going slowly. I wouldn't be surprised to see him stop for the cash. It is $7. Discard some random stuff. He's debating it, which means that he didn't draw kind of like a dream delivery. He doesn't have any certs to get up to 10 probably. He might be just deciding like stop and like gamble on the draw one, discard one. It's always a tough feeling to have at this stage. He'll definitely take the $5. That's a nice easy grab. And he goes for the single draw discard. He does do a hand flip there, so he doesn't totally whiff, but might not have hit the 10 that he was looking for. It's tough with no certificates as a station master. We know that he's bought a couple 3 cows, but he just shuffled the deck, so I think they might just be in there. Unfortunately, I have to pay $2 to Wei Wei here, and I will then use a green cow to complete the block of him, because I'm very scared of his position right now. I think I was maybe overly scared of Wei Wei's position, but just the pile of cash, the flexibility, the points that he could get everywhere, the uncontested cowboys, I think it felt worth it. Also, given that Blake did an upgrade there, I knew that I was always going to get paid $1 out of this. So this is like a point for me. Hooray. I'm just scrapping for points anywhere. But also the number of taxes I'll make over the course of the game, it'll pay itself decently. I think it's worth the action. I think I also had 2 greens in hand at the time that I did this. I don't have anything else exciting going on, right? So I'm just I'm just trying to grab points. There are too many rows left for my strategy here. I did wish that everybody went a little bit faster throughout the course of this game. But that being said, it's not like people have dilly-dallied all that much in terms of what their strategies are. It's the movement into the bottom left of this map where people kind of like move down there and maybe make $4, and that's kind of like it. But we haven't seen like a lot of like, there's no like 2-lappers, right? Like Wei Wei could be playing like a speed cowboy strategy, but he's not. He didn't take the move speed. He's gonna meander. He's gonna buy his cows. He could be buying hazards, but is not buying hazards. So he's just gonna kind of be buying everything with tons and tons of cash, rather than going, cow, deliver. And that's part of the reason is because of where the cow market is on this map. And that's why I was talking about, where the shuffler could be in terms of setting up movements here. Where he's going to make him buy here. He's got 2 guys, so I think he's probably going to buy double browns again. Market's pretty empty here, so it makes sense. Let's call that a 7 points or something like that. Really great conversion of $8. Did he spend $9? Oh, he buys a brown and a red instead, using 3 cowboys for the brown and 2 cowboys for the red to diversify his deck a little bit. It's only a 1-point difference, but makes it so that he gets that red color. I like that buy a lot. That is, I think, a really good choice on Wei Wei's part. Buying those 3 brown cows does feel pretty bad. He's also already got 2 brown cows in his deck, so he's going to have this like glut of brown cows. It's not too much of a concern because he's got the shuffler, but it would be if you were playing a cowboy game without the shuffler there. See a couple more heads go out. Blake is going to have 3, 5, 7, 9. The 9 with no cert there. Yeah, it's a rough to miss that. And it's at this stage where I think Blake's game is more or less dead. I think that he is largely the non-competing player at this stage. He's still got some stuff that he can do to make points. If this game goes for 100 million turns, maybe he's in a good position because he's got the most heads to do things with. But yeah, he's too far behind in points right now. He's behind in tempo and pacing. Now it's me. I think I'm at this point deciding, am I stopping to pick up money? Does it make any sense to do that? Or am I just kind of like rushing through this game to get to the end there? I've got 3 permacerts here. I'd like to make a 10 delivery if my hand is cooperating with it. An 8 delivery is not bad here with a plan of making a 10 delivery next turn as well. I think I'm now probably grousing about having done the rockfall thing, ? Or maybe the Cowboys thing. I will say that Blake stepping on, quote unquote, stepping on my toes or my plan's toes with the Cowboys may have been something that I generated for myself, right? Like I put him into a position of having more limited options. And I thought for sure he would move into like heavy engineers. But he instead saw this other line, which, you know, you have to be versatile for. You have to be ready to respond to when you're boxing a player out in the way that I am. And so I didn't anticipate that Blake was going to move into Cowboys. And so I think a lot of what you're seeing when I'm freezing here is a scrambling of like, what am I going to do? You know, we have 4 rows left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 deliveries, let's say. We've got 3 deliveries coming in. So there's not a lot of times around the lap left. That being said, every time I pick up $5, it's also a victory point. So picking up ahead here does give me some options of buying stuff on the next lap. And $4 is a good chunk of change. Looks like I grab a full amount of cash here. That doesn't change points at all. Did I add Wei Wei's points this time? Yeah, I did, right? I think I did. Dalton's just been picking up money. Yeah, okay, great. These points are obviously very, very crude, but I think it's easy to look at my board state here and say, oh, I mean, Nick has no workers. This is really bad. But I know I'm trying to make this kind of point here that I'm actually like contending with the players, and you know, my interpretation of Wei Wei being the leading player here is actually correct. Of course, Cowboys are speedy rather than contemporaneous here. Let's talk about objectives. I think that Wei Wei's objectives I think he has the 3-4 starter one, which is great. And I think Dalton's got both of these objectives, so we'll give it to him. And my objective is 2 hazards, which I haven't yet unlocked. And Blake's objective is 2 stations, which he hasn't yet unlocked. I can't quite see if he's got a green cowboy, but Wei Wei needs to do some shuffling here. He is going to be stymied by our building placements, which means he's just going to get even more money. Slowing Wei Wei down is actually maybe a little bit of a mistake on my part too. My goal is for this game to end as quickly as possible. And so maybe I want Wei Wei to be delivering more rather than having off actions. That being said, I do think he's my primary competitor at this stage. And so just letting him go fast is probably the worst call for me. It wouldn't make sense to slow down, say, Blake, for instance, or even Dalton, because I don't think that Dalton has... the delivery is not as good. Cowboys is the strategy that is best rewarded from really quick laps, because they want to go to the cowboy market or cow market as often as possible. It tends to be their only way of really converting money into points. And then they also get points generally on decent deliveries, whereas the other strategies don't do that. And so a speedy lap benefits a cowboy player, right? And this is a largely naked board, a largely speedy lap. Looks like he's holding a 4, 6, 8, was holding a 10 there. And then he decided to do a draw discard and ripped into a 5. So he's got an absolute monster delivery now rather than needing to do a 10 delivery. He probably has 5, 9, 11, 30. He might have like a 14 or something like that. That's a tough position to be in when we deliver the 12. You want to deliver the 14, but being stuck on that 4 movement speed is pretty brutal. Blake here is going to pick up his 5th worker, just 4 points. I don't think I gave Wei Wei 4 points for his 5th worker. And Blake is also going to pick up a cowboy, which is going to remove a hazard. Let's call that a 4-pointer. Since he just snatched it up pretty quickly. I think that picking up the water ones are the ones that Blake wants to pick up, but so it might be a 3-pointer, but it's 3 or 4. We'll give him the 4th. Board is too big. We get our 10 delivery. And we're just unlocking the move speed and 3 points here. Every little bit. All right, Dalton's going to buy both of his builders here, which is monstrously good. The fact that none of us were able to contest him on builders, and there's still tons of builders out there, is definitely a failing, a moral failing on all of our parts. That's another 8 points. And Dalton shoots probably into the lead position here. And it's at this point where I'm like, oh, snap. I did not realize the good stepping lines that there are for builder strategy, that you can build up to the 8, build the 4 that gives you the money, build the 6, and then the 12 on top of the 6 is definitely something that I oversaw when I was discounting the 444 for the building strategy. So I've made this mistake before. I will make it again, but it is something that I'm going to keep much, much closer in my mind as I'm playing future lines. And yeah, I don't want to spoil what the end of this game is, but I'll comment more on builder strategy later on. It's rough. Huge market refill here because we have had a lot of buying in the last round of things, which makes sense. And Wei Wei has here a 5, 9, 11, 13, 15 delivery. So yeah, he can decide to deliver to the 14, but he's instead going to choose the 10, which is a very disciplined choice on his part. I think it's right. He really needs the 6 move so that he can get back to that cow market as fast as possible from the head market. He's also got the shuffler, so the odds that he's going to get back to 14 are very high. I'll point out, by the way, that if he had delivered to that 8 earlier, it would have cost him $3, which I don't think he's ever been broke, and he would have an extra objective. I don't know if it's a good objective, but he would have an extra objective. I think he would have to take the 3-4 double hazard, so that is a good objective. Blake's up. He might be deciding whether he wants to stop and get $4. I can't quite see his money situation because of the way the board's set up, and also I think my head's not where his money is. It is where his objective is, but I don't think it's where his money is. Or whether he wants to just go straight to moving. Moving's a little bit awkward for him because he moves 5, which doesn't quite get him into the spot. But if he moves 5, one extra move does get him into the 6-3, the black disc, the final black disc location, which, by the way, if he's not delivering to 10, getting black discs that way works just fine. This is maybe a downside of having chosen to buy the 4th Cowboy rather than the 6th Engineer. I think the 6th Engineer is more points, right? Because it's 4 points for sure rather than removing the hazard. And would guarantee that he could slide into that last spot there. He doesn't even need to sacrifice a guy for the money if he doesn't want the $12, doesn't want to like lose the tempo of the head. But just getting to that spot, I think, would be very helpful for him. Looks like he also picked up a certificate. I've got an insane amount of move here. And I think that in this moment, I am seeing that I can get into the 6-3 slot myself. But really what I want to do is buy a hazard. I think looking at my money here, if I remember correct, I should have at least 10. Looks like I have less than that. Maybe I just have more off the board because I delivered to a 10 spot, I think. Should have at least 10. I think I didn't draw a pair in this set. I could be wrong, but there was some time when I wanted to buy a hazard and it was like I didn't have a pair to discard, and that feels really, really bad, just dropping for $7. So maybe I just decide I need to move past. I think at this stage I've like realized that buying heads is probably more of a backfire than anything. Every head is worth a victory point for me, but man, never before has that 1 point per head been just as awful as it is right now. Oh, looks like this is not the one where I missed it. Hooray. Maybe it was an earlier lap where I skipped over it. I'm going to assume I grabbed that one because it's 3 points. Dalton's got the 5 move, which he got. Did he get a 10 delivery? Yeah, he must have gotten a 10 delivery. I don't think I gave him the 3 points when he did the 10 delivery, which he did mostly off of the back of certificates, which makes sense. He kind of set up top there. It is difficult as builder to get those, to get a 10 delivery with no cows, which he hasn't bought, but he's done it with the 3 certificates and doing just kind of the normal fundamental starting things there. And that 5 move right there, which, you know, I made it so that he didn't have to pay Blake, but that's not really that big of a difference. Allows him to just whip around, get a huge amount of cash here, and then immediately go in and upgrade that 8-pointer into the monstrous 20-pointer. And at this stage, I'm definitely getting that feeling in my heart where I'm like, oh no, did I pitch this game by not going builder? Because Dalton is doing this very, very well. He's going to get to clear all the hazards off the board now. Now, the hazards suck. They are 2 and 3 pointers. But even still, dropping there and spending $4 to remove 4 or 5 points worth of hazards is really good. It's just really good. Wei Wei here goes in. He's going to buy his extra cowboy. And it does look like Dalton is like crushing us right now. But I will point out that he's got all of his objectives in play. I think I've not necessarily counted everyone else's. And he has largely assembled all of his buildings. So he actually is at a stage where he wants the game to end now. He has done all the builder stuff he wants to do. And so the game going longer is he's in the same boat that I am, where he's trying to find ways to get points. Wei Wei has so much money on hand that he decides to buy himself another builder here. I think this is an example of something where, like, if he just didn't have the $7 for having bought a hazard earlier for 3 points and didn't buy this builder, that would be entirely fine. I do think this is essentially a 3-point mistake on Wei Wei's part. He has so much money now that I don't hate buying the builder. You know, he gives himself the option of doing a free build later. He also like wants to spend that money. So maybe he's going to, instead of going to the bandit spot, stopping at the building spot and building something. That's fine. But he also could build, you know, small buildings worth 1 point instead. I don't know. Blake here, I think probably the ideal move is go to that spot. But I don't know what his money situation is. If he has the money, moving one space, paying the 6 for the 3 points and the black disc, which lets him take the black disc off the board, and then moving 5 around the track is what he wants to be doing. Because he wants to try to hit as many things in that last row as possible. He won't ring the bell at this stage. He's run out of time. He's skipped too many train movements to make it, but they're still pretty good conversions, right? 8 for 5 victory points is like the worst of them. And that's a better victory point conversion than most of the other stuff you can do in the base part of the game. Not if you're Cowboys, of course, but yeah, a lot of other things. He's just shaking his head no. Because the thing is that he can't do that and Cowboy stuff and otherwise. You know, honestly, it might be worth it going in, sacrificing his Cowboy, taking the $12, and then he could buy another Cowboy for the hazard removal. It's not bad. He wants to stop at the head market again anyway to buy another engineer. But he skips over it entirely. Oh, he's broke. He's flat broke. I see. He's not paying anybody. That's why he can't do any of that stuff. Got it. Tough to skip that 5 movement, though. It's a lot of engineer movement I'm going to know. Oh, it's holding money. What is happening? Oh, he grabbed money for discarding a green. He actually ended up not building anything. Oof. Bummer return. Oh, at this point I have 2 hazards, so I should give myself an extra 3 points. I don't think I did. I think I gave myself the points for the hazards. Everything's messy. Points are bad. You can ignore that thing at the top of the screen. It was maybe more for curiosity than anything else, but I'm going to stick with it. Doing some weird moving here because I'm counting math, I guess. Oh, because yet again, I see that I can move into that other slot there. Got it. Here's what's going on. I see that I can move into the 6-3 slot, and so I'm debating whether I'm supposed to stop there and do that. I wanted to just buy cows and then move on, like buy very expensive cows, but the 6-3 slot is $6 for 3 points. It's kind of like buying a hazard. It's actually, you know, would I be entirely comfortable doing? Blake makes a really sad face about this. The real reason that I end up doing this, though, is not for Blake. It's that I'm worried that if Blake doesn't go there, Dalton's going to get to slide in there. And I don't want Dalton to get to slide in there, get the points for it. Also, if he decides that he's got a possibility in the game to remove his 6 builder and place his 6 builder, I just don't want him to have the option of going around the map and do that if Blake decides to skip it. So I decide I'm just going to block it entirely. Also, it's not bad to just prevent Dalton from going in there ever. It allows me to just limit the ways that he can spend his money, which he's going to be really good at doing. And I think he is exactly 4 spaces away from it. So this is not a Blake block. It is a Dalton block, but Blake gets blocked by the side effect of this. Also, it is just the best option for me. I don't have a ton of ways to score points. Everything is like scoring 3-4 points or something like that. Everything is frozen on my computer now. There we go. Dalton with a quick turn here just to pick up some even more cash. Builder is just so incredibly hungry for money. He needs it because he wants to buy hazards off board. Wei Wei buying another 7 points here. The cows. And another 3 points with the blues. This is the advantage of having 6 cowboys, is that you can go absolutely ham at the market there. And because Blake was broke, he didn't get to buy any of those out from underneath him. So not really contesting cowboys at this point in time. Draw a discard for Blake here. And he would have been able to go onto this next spot, pick up money from the bandits, and then slide into the station here, which would have been good for him. So yeah, me getting in the way here was pretty nasty for him. But really, you weren't my target, Blake. I'm sorry. I was trying to do the best by me. And because he can't slide in, he says, well, I'll just deliver then. Sounds good. I think it would have been entirely reasonable for him to stop for money and just buy heads for victory points. Right? Every cowboy and every engineer is worth 4 points for him now, which is not terrible. Decent delivery here. I think that finally gets him his tenor. Chooses the speed and the money. I do want to go back actually briefly. Dalton, by the way, notice that he only needed 5 move and grabbed the 3 victory points rather than the 3 coins. It's a really, really interesting choice. It's a little bit risky. If we decided that we wanted to get a little bit more in his way and we were able to, like this last lap, it might have cost him an entire turn. But he, I think, saw that things were going to get removed in a certain way, that 5 was just enough move, and so he wanted to take the 3 points rather than the $3. I don't think that the 5 move rather than the 6 move is going to come back to haunt you. In most games, it would. But there are definitely some games where it wouldn't. This objective grab here is unfortunate for Wei Wei, as Blake has, I think, almost everything to make this happen, although maybe he doesn't have the hazards. I'm not sure. And flips up what I think is a very good objective for me. I suspect I'm nearly broke here. I have enough move to just go in and deliver right now, which, you know, again, I want this game to end. I am just doing worse stuff every turn than everyone else is. I suppose I could stop and pick up money. I could stop and do building, but no, let's just get out of here. There's nothing special left for me to do. I don't put out the hazard because I don't want Dalton to be able to buy it. And is this my 14 delivery or an 8 delivery? Looks like I'm delivering the 8, which is going to be 2 objectives. I'll immediately grab the one that flipped up, which was a lucky flip for me. We're going to just add 5 points for me now. Absolutely going to be doing that. Oh, I did pick up the other orange, so I'm going to give myself the 3 points for that as well. Oh, looks like I'm back to the drawing board in terms of how many objectives I'm going to have in total. I'm counting how many extra objectives I'm going to claim before the end of the game. And it's iffy. God, I'm so expressive. It's ridiculous. I like this haircut, though. I need to do the sideburns thing more often. I said I'm going to grab 3 3s instead because I already have 2 3s. Interesting. and I have all of the stations, and I flip up things that require hazards that I can't afford. I'm going to just, if I get this, it's 4 more points, but I might not have the time to buy another 3 cows. So it just is another way for me to edge for scoring more victory points, but I might not claim that objective. Dalton here buys 2 hazards really quickly. We're just going to say they're worth 5 points. Might have been only 4. Wei Wei here does a shuffle. Pitches a 5, which kind of pretty clearly communicates at least part of what his hand is. So we see a 9 there, so it looks like he's going to have another monster delivery, probably that 14 that he's looking for. Might even get up to 16, and then he has to make the choice. It is ironically better to deliver the 14 than the 16 in this situation, but if he thinks he's going to lap around again and get to 14, then it's better to deliver the 16 now. It just depends on how much he wants to push his luck. Looks like he's going to stop and buy something with greens there. He's counting all of his cards, but it looks like it's going to be a green discard there. He's making sure that he can still deliver something good if he doesn't draw a green. And he says, you know what? I'm not going to discard the green because I have 5, 9, 12, 14, 16 in hand. So he doesn't want to risk not having the 16. He'll pick himself up 4 points for the building. Which makes sense. He still has cash on hand. He's been the guy who's been making taxes all this game. He's playing Cowboys. And yes, he's bought a lot of builder, or like a lot of heads, but pretty much that's it. Heads and cheap cows, right? It looks like a 4-point objective for Blake. Let's just give it to him, even though I can't see what it is. I'm going to assume that means that he's completed it. And yeah, I mean, depending on his money situation, is the only one that we really can't see. He could stop and buy some heads. He could go to the bottom left and pitch some cards. He also might just move his train. It's less exciting to move his train now that he hadn't moved his train before, because the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, he could move his train and then move his train again. I think that gets him to the 7-6 spot, which is not terrible. It does cost 2 actions, though. Rounding that corner is painful. And he's not going to do that much moving. He's going to do the 1 move. He's explicitly skipped the other move. And he'll get in. So I think he probably is paying for an extra move there or something. Or I might have miscounted. But either way, that'll be 5 points. I write down. Just want to make sure I wrote down the final score somewhere. We're getting close. It's the next, like, this says that it's 38 minutes left in the recording, but it's going to finish before then. We're playing at 20% improved speed. Getting tired too. Just past midnight. And that'll be 3 more points for Blake because he takes the move speed. Trying to figure out. Looks like Blake has removed his 1, 2, 3. Oh, never mind. That's the 4 cert, not the 6 cert. That makes sense. Thought maybe he had placed like 3 black discs, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Looks like I'm doing a double count of my deck here. Maybe this is the turn where I don't have 2 of the same, and I really want to buy a hazard. I do have a draw 2, discard 2 there. Which is maybe the time to use it. Delivery-wise, I have done the 6, 8, the 10, and the 12. I'd love to deliver to the 14, though, this turn. So I actually might be looking at what my deck is going to cough up for the rest of the round. All right, let's say that's probably a 2-pointer that's stuck around for a long time. Did I not discard? I did discard cards, right? I think I did discard cards. I think I did make the 4. Did I do the draw 2, discard 2? No, I did not. Yeah, I don't know what I was debating that turn. I think it's like maybe it's just sad that it's a 2-point hazard. But again, I don't have a lot of other options of things to do. Not going to be moving my train. I do want to be buying a cow. Looks like I have enough money left over to go buy that 3 cow. And really I want 4 hazards, right? That's ultimately the goal, is to get to the even number. I think I might also need a 4th one for my objectives, which I'm a little bit nervous about at this stage. That being said, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 deliveries left. And that's with Dalton having already delivered. So I'm almost certainly going to deliver, and then the person after me is going to deliver the end of the game. Wei Wei here will deliver a 16. That's 6 points. I think I have not counted either Wei Wei nor Mai's 6 points for the 12-10 match either, so I'm going to go ahead and give us those. Dalton, I didn't see. I think he delivered the 8. The 8. And it looks like he picked up an objective that he absolutely has completed that's worth 5 points, so we'll give him that. Pretty quick whip around here back to Blake. Again, can't quite see his money situation. If he's got any money, he's going to stop and buy cows, but he might again be broke, which might send him over to the whip through space. I don't think that he's going to build any buildings. He might, go to the draw discard and then get bandits. He does have money. Great. Good for him. By the way, I do think that Blake's siren song this game was that he saw the cowboy shuffler, and that's why he might have moved into it. 'Cause it is good, and it's clear that he's kind of set up for that as a sort of backup plan. But we can see how hungry it's been on his resources. That looks like a 4-pointer. Let's say it's a 4-pointer. Pay a little bit. Buy a cow here. Probably a 2-point cow. Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to do that at this stage. That's going to be actually 6 points, though, because we had that objective that we wanted to complete. Dalton here basically only has this bottom left action. I don't know if that's a 3 or 4-pointer. We'll give him 3. We'll spend 7 to remove that spot. Really just making it a super duper clean board. This does allow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that was a... Oh, Wei Wei's got a 7 move, so he would have been able to go there even if Dalton didn't clear it. I do think maybe it was a 4-pointer because he didn't clear one from the rock fall. Not entirely sure, though. Wei Wei here whips around, buys cows. I wouldn't be surprised to see a purple. He could do a purple and a yellow for 7 points. Might just do a purple. He could flip out more cows, hoping to hit like a nice brown. But I think the purple makes most sense. Yep. Pick up 7 points here. People say the Cowboys are bad at late game, but they really just do a nice job of converting their cash into cows, assuming that the market is available. Of course, the biggest challenge becomes if there are multiple Cowboy players, and Blake has taken some points off the table from Wei Wei by being, four Cowboys in. I've picked up a couple cows here and there. Blake with a draw discard. It's kind of shaking his head. Usually when you're at the end of the lap here, it's pretty obvious what you're drawing and discarding, but he kind of keeps looking at the board, which makes me feel like he is wondering if he needs to do some more draw discarding, ? He's got 3 certificates, so a little bit of flexibility there. He is hoping to get to the 12 here. Whole bunch of ones. Also discarding a 3-4 objective, which I think he can do. I think I'm going to give him I think that's why he needed to buy the 4. We're going to give him the 5 points for that. I'm going to assume that he's completed that objective. And maybe we're wrong. Who knows? This is Blake's last delivery, almost certainly, so it makes sense to spend down all of his batteries here. Looks like he did not. Oh, it's a pretty miserable delivery at 6, even after a draw discard. Maybe he's got a disc slid under there at 8 that I can't quite see. But that's painful. I guess if he claims an objective right now, that does answer the question about the 8. But he didn't hit the 12, which would have been, I think, pretty hard for his deck. But no, it wouldn't have been that hard. That was probably a really bad draw discard. I think Blake's bad beats just keep coming. He needs 2 stations for that one and 2 oranges. I'm not sure if he's got the 2 oranges, but it's to second station hopefully he can get. So maybe that'll be 5 points. And we're at this stage where almost certainly between Wei Wei and myself, the game is going to end on deliveries. It does depend on when we flip as a 3 here for the next 2 turns. It might be that 2 deliveries ends it. It might be that 3 deliveries ends it. Now we see all these hazards coming out. By the way, I really like that Blake put out the bandit rather than the hazard to prevent people from buying any of the hazards. Even though it puts out money, at this stage of the game, that's like largely irrelevant. Entertainingly for me, stopping and picking up $12 is 2 victory points is like almost as good as any of the rest of my actions. So that is entirely viable. But I really, really need to make sure that I get another hazard and then the game ends. So my hope here is that Wei Wei has a good enough hand that he could literally just deliver skipping his own shuffler. That would be the dream. Because I want just the one more action and then I want the game to end. Since we didn't flip a bandit here, I basically make it so that the next person has the choice of ending the game or not. That's not ideal. I don't want any of the players to be able to deliver and the game not to end. So I really want this 3 flip here to be a head and not a bandit. And moment of truth, drum roll. Hooray. Dalton moving 1, 2, 3. Which allows him to do a little bit of draw discard action, whip around to here, collect a whole pile of cash, get some certificates, whole pile of cash, get some certificates. And then he's going to use that move 4 to either build a building or go to the buy hazard spot. But because the game hasn't ended yet, he's going to do buildings and then follow that up with a hazards probably to end the game. He probably doesn't even really care about doing this last delivery. I don't think that he can make it to a 12. In fact, maybe forcing him into a delivery is not bad. He's almost certainly going to get the 6er though. So an objective might be good for him. It's a little tough to tell. I think not the objectives that are in play there. He'll move into the station here for a 4-2 conversion. He's checking to make sure that he has the money to make it all happen and decides yes. He's down to $6 there, looks like. Is that right? He just picked up 10. 12 probably. 2 more. Yeah, I think there's something blocking the money there. There's no way he's broke, right? Guess I'm wrong. He'll drop a taxer here. I think those are worth 6 victory points or something like that. Something like that. Wei Wei says, all right, I'll pay you your blood money. Getting directly in my way at the perfect time. He's certainly the primary competition here. And we'll draw discard into his whole pile of nonsense. That for me means that the game definitely is not ending this next turn. So Blake knows that he probably has 2 turns left. I know that I probably have 2 turns left. Dalton knows that he probably has 2 turns left. This does make me wonder in retrospect if I was supposed to stop and pick up that bandit for 2 victory points just for the money, right? The $10 is 2 victory points. I'll have to see what I do with my last action, but I was hoping that the game would end, but I think I maybe was a little bit too laser focused. I think I should have seen that the game wasn't likely to end anyway. And that if I was the one who delivered in, well, I get the 2 points for delivering in, but not getting the hazard is quite a bummer. And Wei Wei actually stops and he builds. This is a 4-point improvement on his position here. It costs him a point, I guess, in coins, but still. Also helps him cycle his deck a little bit more if he didn't draw into exactly what he wanted. Blake, the perpetual question of I don't know how much money he has, but he's either driving the train, 5 spaces for the 7-6, or if he's got tons of money, he can stop and buy some guys. In fact, actually, if he had $12, stopping and buying 2 cowboys and taking $10 back from the market would be the dream. He'll get $4 back for the engineer. Is that give enough to buy another cowboy? Sure, right? 5, 6, 7? I guess not if that spent him down to 0, but... Maybe he's seeing that if he buys the cowboy, he's not going to be able to take another action. He's not going to be able to do the station thing next. Yep. So he's probably, lower than I thought he was. It's a bummer that he couldn't buy that for himself. It's a pretty cheap cowboy. I'll buy a crappy hazard. We'll assume it's 2 points. It'll give me 3. Why not? Feel like I've earned it. We delivered recently. I would have put out something. Dalton here sees that if he goes onto the hazard space, he will have to deliver. Looks like he doesn't want to deliver, which makes sense. He probably doesn't have any objectives that he's excited in. So he will take, I'm just going to give him 2 points functionally. Oh, maybe he even needed the cash. I'm still going to give him 2 points. And then Wei Wei, this was really painful for me to see. He goes here and extends the game even longer than expected. An additional turn, unanticipated. Dalton is largely fine with this. Or actually, no, Dalton is going to be... Yeah. I think this is... Dalton will have to do hazards next. And then Wei Wei will probably deliver. And then that means that Dalton is going to... So Dalton is in a position where he is going to be forced to deliver here. But I think he doesn't have a disc on the 6, so I think it's okay for him. I don't think he's penalized for this. I think he's got enough space. But he might have to go to the 1 and pay 3 points. Can't quite tell. If he does have to go to the 1 and pay 3 points, that is kind of interesting. Wei Wei there did a draw discard, so I think he's trying to fish for the 14, which he doesn't quite have. Actually, I know that for a fact from the table talk, but we can see from his hand there that he's looking at his discard pile. And yeah, we couldn't quite see it, but yeah, I think he's just not hit his 14. Blake here is going to go ahead and get his, is it 6 points? Something like that. Can already tell you that the score is wrong because Blake's ending score is 44. I have him at 45, so I've definitely been a little bit generous here or there, double counted something. Looks like I back up my train here for a certificate, or for one certificate, 2 certificates. Yeah, 2 certificates is not that exciting, but I had to spend certificates to get to the 14 that I was trying to earlier. Oh, did I give myself the points for the 14? I don't think I did when I delivered the 14. But that's another 3 points for certificates for me. So something decent for me to do. That was kind of what I was hoping would end the game here. And Dalton will say gets 4 points from buying hazards there, something like that. And Wei Wei here, if he can't deliver to that 14, it is a 14-point difference for him to deliver to the 14. He's counting all the cards in his deck. And I'll tell you what he says at the table after thinking about this for a minute. He says it's a 50-50 shot. So he essentially could stop at Dalton's building, draw discard, and hit. And if he hits his 50-50, it's 14 points. And if he misses the 50-50, then instead he is delivering to the 8 probably, which is a 3-4-5, which is 5 points. So it's a 9-point difference. However, it's also 2 extra points for Wei Wei if he ends the game now rather than allowing Dalton to end it. And if you think that Dalton's the primary opponent, it's a 4-point swing. I do want to point out for when we talk about the endgame scores that if Wei Wei had been a little bit luckier with draws from his deck, and he's got nothing to complain about, even with a shuffler, he's had good draws all game long. He's always had the 5 to deliver at the end. Like, it hasn't been one of these things where it's like it's been hiding in the last card of his deck or something like that. That he has very mitigated luck in this game, and it has never worked out problematically for him. So he has nothing really to complain about. But this lap, he does have something to complain about. If he had hit here, he would get to deliver right now. He wouldn't have to have this agonizing decision about whether he stops and takes a 50-50 for 14 points, or let's call it 9 points because he gets the 5 at least. And again, gives Dalton 2 extra points and loses 2 points himself. So again, if you think Dalton's the primary opponent, we're talking about a 50-50 shot at a 5-point difference here, essentially, which, I mean, you should do. It's positive expected value, right? Like, it's 2.5 points, which is good. But if you don't hit, it's potentially game ending. So he's sitting here kind of counting, like, what do I think people's scores are and things like that. And considering, what is that going to look like? If he did hit, if his deck had coughed up what it needed, it's going to be 2 extra points for him and 2 fewer points for Dalton. Because no matter what Dalton has to deliver, Dalton's next action is delivering. That changes nothing. So it's a question of whether he is the one who ends the game for 2 points or not. Blake and I think, have like basically nothing to do with our final actions here. Probably picking up money. My guess is that we're both broke. I may not have given myself the 3 points for the extra pair of hazards that I set up there. I think I've also missed an objective of mine somewhere along the way. He does it. Draw, discard. And he hits the 50-50, I'll say. So he's going to get his 14-point delivery next turn. That's me being sad. That's my salty face. Actually, if I can get one more certificate, two, three, four, five. Yeah, one more certificate is another 3 victory points for me. So I might go pick up bandits and then back up the train for a certificate or something like that. Blake has to send some money Dalton's way. We'll go here in the draw discard. And he could deliver now, ending the game. Which, if he does, is a 2-point cost of Dalton's points, since he's going to be forced to deliver anyway. That is really what Wei Wei would like to see, is Blake deliver right now. For me, it's the difference of an extra turn or not. So I actually really don't... I mean, it costs Dalton 2 points. But I think an extra turn is preferable for me. I think another delivery is probably about 2 points worth of value just in money. And I don't think there's any more objectives I can probably cover. I think I've got all my things spoken for. But maybe there's some outside chance that there's an objective I would claim at... I think I've placed at 6 and 8, so I wouldn't. Blake, however, decides not to end the game. I think he didn't draw into any real deliveries that he could do. He needs like a 12 or something like that. And scoops up like a point in money here, basically. I'd give him an extra point, but I know I'm already wrong in his score. I think I've probably counted an objective for him that was incorrect. So actually, let's give him the point, but subtract 5, something like that. That's probably more correct. I think I've assumed an objective that he actually did not have the hazards for, perhaps. I think I was pretty broke looks like I didn't throw that much money around. So I picked up a bandit, backed up the train. That's an extra $3. Wei Wei, we know, is going to score about 14. Dalton's going to score about 2 here. And I think ultimately what I end up missing here as Dalton ends the game is an objective of his, because Dalton's end score is 89. So I missed an objective and maybe something else. Maybe I undercounted hazards or something like that. Wei Wei's score ends up being 87. So very, very close on counting his score. And my ending score, I missed something, probably also an objective, or maybe I undercounted my hazards at 83. So 89, 87, 83, and 44 become the genuine end game scores. I didn't do too terrible in the counting here. I want to point out a couple things about this. Remember, I was saying that if Wei Wei hit, if he hit on that last turn, he has 2 points and Dalton doesn't have 2 points. It's an 89-87 game in his favor instead. This is a game that absolutely can come down to that. I said really early in the game, really early in this, that I thought Wei Wei was winning. I know a lot of people would look at what Dalton was doing and say, look, it's an uncontested builder that's unstoppable, but the 4-4-4 building, wasn't doing that much. He did manage to make a ton of points, though, off of the actual buildings and by claiming 7 different hazards over the course of the game. So he just made points kind of not through using the 4-4-4 building for its effective purposes, but just by getting enough money to allow him to do these other building things along the way, which is really, really clever on his part and very well done, I've got to say. Wei Wei, however, had a not uncontested cowboy strategy, but he just had so much cash, so much flexibility. I think that this was his game to lose. There were a couple things in here that I disagreed with decisions on his part. It's a little hard to say how things would have actually shaken out because I was suggesting that Wei Wei should buy hazards at certain points in time, but he wouldn't have had the builders, which he did use to buy, an 8-point building that's sitting there in the middle of the board over the course of 2 actions. Who knows if that would have looked exactly the same if he had been taking some other actions along the way. But I do think that it's entirely possible. I mean, we know from the very last action that things go slightly different for him, that he ends up winning the game. If the game is a smidge faster, I think that maybe winds up being good for me. Although I needed like an extra turn or two. If it was like a little bit shorter, maybe I end up winning instead. At 83 points here, I'm incredibly close. I think that folks largely discounted me in this game. By the time we're 2/3 of the way through, I think that everyone kind of had the vibe like I wasn't going to be a player that was contesting. But there's a lot of points to be gained from those Station Master tiles and a lot of journey points that I made along the way there. That being said, I do really wonder if I just pivoted into Cowboys, if I bought the 3 Cowboys rather than the Cowboy and the Engineer in the middle of the game to steal those extra 2 Station Master tiles, if it would have been worth it. The Station Master tiles end up being worth 3. I mean, the certificate one is a lot of points. It's like 9 points. So that's 12 plus another 4 is 16 points. That's a lot of points. It's hard to say that I wouldn't have gotten 16 points from cow purchases rather than those train moves. It would have been really close. I certainly would have suppressed Wei Wei's score a little bit more, but Blake did a good job of doing that as well. So I don't know. Even trying to sit here and look back, I'm not sure that I would have played that differently. Going all the way back to the beginning of the game, I suppose I could have bought double builders instead of double engineers. That probably would have been fine. Builders are very good. I was just scared of a situation where builders were contested. I wouldn't even be able to buy my 4th builder. And I think that that would be really, really devastating. So it's tough looking back on this. Like I really was squeezing as many points as I possibly could. I maybe had to give up a little bit too much tempo to dance around Blake in the early mid game. And maybe that cost me some other actions, some buildings that I should have dropped into play or something like that. Maybe I should have played a building on my very first lap or something like that. I'm not totally sure. I don't hate the strategy. But yeah, I mean, Wei Wei and Dalton as 1 and 2 here, I mean, they did it really well. Wei Wei's like board placements were really solid. I think the shuffler worked okay for him. He did make taxes off of it, but I do think his movement was a little clunky. That being said, Dalton kind of achieved everything he wanted to do with 2 rows left. I don't think that the last lap was necessarily better for him. So I don't know if the game is faster, if that benefits Wei Wei or Dalton, because Dalton was winning at that, kind of at the 3/4 way through the game or whatever. Pretty close there. Really interesting game. I don't know what else to say about this, but really, honestly, I thought this was really interesting. I didn't get to, we get to see almost every strategy essentially you could possibly execute in this game. Some good hybrid stuff going on. Obviously, Blake had a really rough game, and it's because I kind of ruined his game for him, which I do feel badly about. But I do think that there were ways to pivot there. I think that going heavy engineers and trying to ring the bell could have been pretty dang viable for him. I don't know that would have been a winning position given that the way that the board was laid out, but I absolutely think that the game looks very different for both him and me if he claims that 3rd Station Master tile. I definitely then go into Cowboys. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if my score is very similar, but I think that Blake's score is a lot better if he grabs that Station Master there. So not to rub it in, sir, or anything like that, but if you are watching this, that is the one thing I would be sure I did differently in the future games. Dalton's game was really solid. I think that I did make a pretty big mistake by removing that rock fall there. It just means that Wei Wei wins instead, so it doesn't help me to win. But yeah, I would have had a couple fewer points, but it would have cost Dalton a turn somewhere along the way, which seemed pretty important. Yeah, super interesting game. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and see you next time.